Hello, everyone. Let's look at the study question for Galileo's letter to the Grand Duchess Christina, which is essentially, I would say, a letter in the philosophy of science, a treatise, an essay on the philosophy of science and also how science is to be regarded by religion and how it fits in with religion. Number one, the intention of the Holy Ghost is to teach us how one goes to heaven, not how heaven goes. Explain what Galileo means by this. Well, the how heaven goes thing, it's a double entendre, right? Heaven does not mean the same in both uses. How heaven goes is how the heavenly bodies go, how the celestial objects go, the moon, the stars, the sun. Whereas heaven in the first use is heaven in the sense of the afterlife. Right? So it's a play on words. And the idea is a serious one, right? The intention of the Holy Ghost, basically the intention of the church, the intention of religion itself, is to teach you how to go to heaven. In the sense of it, the concern is with salvation. It is not with astronomy, right? The how heaven goes thing is basically astronomy. So it's Galileo is kind of carving out different sort of regions for religion on the one hand and science on the other. Number two, why does Galileo think it would be disastrous to always read the Bible literally? Well, he thinks it'll lead you into terrible mistakes, heresies, kind of ridiculous ideas about God, for instance, that he has hands and feet, that he literally forgets things. I mean, the idea is that those sort of things, the idea that God has a body or the idea that God could forget things, is in contradiction to the notion that God is an all powerful, omniscient, and perfect being. And, so, to generally not ever take anything that's said except in its most literal grammatical sense would lead you into grave errors about the nature of God. I mean, what is he setting up here is obviously that certain passages, few as they are, that might indicate in the Old Testament that the sun was in motion around the earth do not necessarily have to be read at face value. Number three, why does Galileo think that some biblical passages do actually sometimes describe things that we know are not literally true? I think the idea is that fundamentally it's because the Bible's for everybody. It's not just for the learned, it's not just for the educated. Most of the people throughout history in Jewish, Christian, other all societies have been illiterate peasants. So you don't want to confuse them. And it looks like the sun moves in the sky. I mean, that's what it looks like. That's what it seems like from day to day. To get complicated and to start talking about the different motions of the earth and how those true motions account for the apparent motions of the sun and the sky, you're going to lose people, right? And if indeed the intention is to teach people how to go to heaven, not how heaven goes, you're going to confuse them. So the Bible, he says, was written for everybody, and with an ethical and salvational goal. It's not to give somebody true opinions about astronomy or physics. So maybe things are written in not so straightforward a way, or maybe they're not strictly true. But that's for the sake of what the Bible is really for. Number four, Galileo is convinced that the fundamental truths of science and the fundamental truths of religion could never contradict each other. That is basic belief, right? That some things we find out through reason and experimentation, and that's science. And some things we find out through revelation, and that's religion. And they are both pathways to truth. So the truths of science could never contradict the truths of religion because they're both true. So if it seems like they contradict, then it must be that we made a mistake somewhere. Do you agree? Why or why not? I think it's a big question, obviously, a big question, because it's really about whether this modern scientific outlook can coexist with the traditional religious outlook that most human beings have had with regard to nature and themselves and nature. I don't know. I have a personal decision, obviously, but an important one that people have to make, I think.